Hey everyone, this is Holly Hedinga here on the Real Wausau Real Estate Show. Today I'm in the studio with Carly Schwanz. Carly?
Hello.
This is, I think, our first time in studio together.
Yes, just the two of us.
It's gonna be good. If you're hearing this, don't leave. Stay tuned. Today we're talking about investing in property, buying, investing, flipping, and no one better to talk about it than Carly. She's done this not once, not twice, 4 times, and I don't think she's done yet.
No, I'm not.
So today we have her in the studio just to kind of share some insights from what she's learned over the years and just kind of explain the process, obviously what you've gleaned along the way. So take us back to the first purchase. Tell me a little bit about how you found the house, what you bought it for. Kind of walk me through it.
Sure. I was a youngin' living in Stevens Point, and I knew I wanted to buy an investment property as a way to break into real estate and make myself a little bit of money. I had some skills that came along with me, so I knew that I could do some of the work. So I got my pre-approval letter, and I got hooked up with an agent in Stevens Point. And I started getting sent homes. I saw a couple of them, and then the house that I ended up purchasing hit the market. I saw it the day it hit the market, and I wrote the offer the day it hit the market. And this was, I think, 2018, 2019. I don't remember the exact year. It was listed for like $55,000. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house in Stevens Point. It had a really nice 2-car garage, actually. It needed a bathroom renovation desperately. The toilet, I remember you could sit on the toilet and it would sink into the floor because it was just that bad. And like the shower had plastic lining the walls because otherwise it would go into the walls and leak. It was no good. So I went in, I knew my skill set, we made an offer that day, and it got accepted.
Was that asking price at the time?
I think I ended up paying like $160,500 or something. Like I added a little bit more because I had asked for 3% back for closing costs.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So that was kind of my way of they got asking, but I worked it into the purchase price.
Okay,
so,
that makes sense.
So yeah, I had a loan from my grandmother for $3,500 and used that for the rest of the money, and that's how I started. So I ended up selling that one within about a year, and I sold that one for I think it was $92,000 or $95,000.
Wow. And how much did you put into it?
Like maybe $5,500.
Okay.
I had a Menards credit card that I put it all on, and when I sold the house, I paid that off, and I paid my grandma back, and there I was with thousands of dollars to put into my next investment.
So how long did that take you, I guess, from the beginning to when you sold it? Was it a couple months? Or?
It was like less than a year.
Okay.
I would say right around a year.
Okay.
Yep.
Wow,
yeah.
That's pretty quick.
Yeah, and then I bought my next one, which was listed for $104,000. I paid asking for that.
Okay.
And I ended up selling that one about a year later again. I think I sold it for like $180,000, or like it might have been, I think it was right around $180,000.
Okay.
So
well, that was still a good profit about a year later.
Yes.
So living in the house, working on it, improving it, which kind of brings me to my next question. A lot of the work that you were getting into, is that something that you did a lot of that on your own? Were you hiring a lot of contractors to come in and do specialty work? Kind of walk us through that.
Right. Luckily, I grew up with a father that was a plumber, so a lot of those skills came along with having him, which was extremely helpful, and I've learned a ton from him doing these homes. But a lot of the stuff I did myself, like flooring, painting. I did a little bit of drywall. I replaced some interior doors, tile work. I did a whole shower. So a lot of that stuff I've done, and I just knew that was in my skill set, and I also knew that, and like maybe some of you guys are who are listening, I wanted to learn how to do it, so I did it. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to take the leap and try.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And sometimes, too, it takes a little bit longer maybe that first go around, but I've seen some of your tile work personally, and it's awesome. It's amazing.
Oh,
but
thanks, Holly.
it took a while to get to that point.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just like you said, diving in, taking the time on the front end, and knowing that you will get quicker and more efficient
Absolutely.
as you go. That's with anything.
And you'll start to learn, I guess, your limits as well of what you're capable of. Maybe you do a couple tile jobs and you're like, tiling's not for me. Then you maybe look for homes that don't need it, or that's something that you work in your budget and you hire that out.
Yeah, and that leads me to another point. I guess going into purchasing a house, how should a buyer think about, how much money can I put into this and still make a profit? As an agent, what advice would you give them, to kind of consider if they're wanting to do this?
Sure. Something that's going to be really important when you're going into it is get that pre-approval letter, of course, and figure out how much you can afford in a mortgage payment while also still making those repairs to the home. You need to be able to afford both if you're going to do kind of like that house hacking method. So I always, when I work with buyers, I make sure that they have enough to pay their mortgage, but they'll also have money left over every month to pay for that flooring, pay for that paint, make sure that you can still continue to work on your home and not be stressed out about the payment.
Yeah, and that's important, because if you're moving into something that's maybe more move-in ready,
It's you don't have to buy paint, you don't have to buy flooring, so it's less of a problem.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think too, for buyers considering living there for less than a year, let's say, you want to maybe ask your agent to pull a couple comparable properties for what this could look like renovated, because certain homes, depending on the size, may have what I like to call a ceiling for price. Even if you put in, granite or quartz counters and tile and you do all of this work, depending on the size of the house, location, factors like that, there will be a ceiling eventually, and I'm sure you've walked people through that before.
Yes.
I mean, putting in $90,000 and wanting to resell it for $200 more than you bought it isn't likely, obviously.
Yep.
So
it's something, just for example, like in town especially, it's like you had said, the location's not going to change. Your square footage most likely isn't going to change unless you add an addition to it or something. So you have to continue to keep those things in mind, and you don't want to over renovate that home and make it the most expensive home on the block, because the other homes in the area are only ever going to be worth so much. So you have to make smart investments into it and smart remodeling, and make sure that you're not, I guess, adding too much.
Yeah, in terms of making a profit, because money in doesn't always mean money out.
Right.
And we were kind of talking about that a little before the show, is, balancing who you're hiring. Obviously, everyone has a different sphere who can help them out, but who you're hiring versus what work you can do on your own. Those are all things to consider on the front end, before diving in head first. But I guess to switch topics just a little bit, give us a little bit of your favorite project to do on a house, and I think you kind of touched on it, and also your least favorite, just from your experience.
I think, gosh, my favorite project that I've done, that's a tough one. I guess maybe, I do kind of like doing tile, because I think it adds so much to the home. But I think maybe my favorite project that I did was the kitchen in the second flip. It had laminate countertops, like the boomerang laminate countertops from like the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Great condition, but just not updated. So I had done one of like those kits to refinish it with epoxy.
Yeah.
And then I had done the full backsplash on it, and I had also done all of the flooring. So it had the same cabinetry, and it had everything else was the same. But just doing those simple updates, it made the kitchen look like $1 million, and it didn't cost much to do that. So that's like a smart investment. It was little money in with a big return. Some of my least favorite things have had to do with drywall. I don't like drywall. It's dusty and it's dirty, and drywall is heavy, and it's just not my thing. So I know that now, and I learned that in my first couple of properties. So I know now that that's maybe something where I look for a home that doesn't need that, or I consider it in my budget and I hire that out. So
Yeah, and those are just some things you learn along the way. I mean,
Yes.
you don't know until you know.
Right. Absolutely.
So if someone's listening and they've been thinking, I've always wanted to do this, live in a house, fix it up as I live in it, and maybe sell within a year or two, what piece of advice would you give them from what you've learned?
I would say, and this isn't meant to be discouraging at all, of course, I do it myself every day, and it's something that I like, but just making sure that you know your skill set coming into it. If you're somebody that's handy, go for it. If you're somebody that's not, maybe think about it a little bit more. Make sure you're a go-getter, and things are going to cost 2 times as much, and they're going to take 2 times as long, probably. So just be prepared for that, and it's not always what like HGTV shows on TV. So like your house is gonna be messy and there's gonna be a layer of dust, and it's hard work, but it's really worth it. It's fun at the end to walk through the house before closing and see like, wow, like I did all of this and I was able to really get some serious sweat equity out of this home. It's fun. It is. It's a lot of work, but it's fun. Yeah. It's rewarding.
And that's what I think. I mean, I haven't done anything to your level. The current home I live in, we put a little bit of sweat equity, and I did have to hire some people because I'm not as tough as Carly.
That's fine. Some people, I mean, that worked for you. So,
and I think just going into it, in my experience as well, is it is going to be more work than you initially think. And that's not bad, but just give yourself a little bit of time, more than you think, to accomplish some of these things, especially if you have another job. And it's not your full-time job is just fixing up this house.
Right. You're not going to be able to do the same amount of work as a contractor can do.
Exactly. And I think that's important to balance. But in terms of speed, if it takes you 8 months versus a year, in the scope of things, it's really not going to matter in terms of reselling something extremely quickly.
Right.
I guess in our area right now, Carly, just maybe talk a little bit about the inventory around someone maybe looking to purchase a flip. I mean, you had alluded to your first one in the 55s. Those are far and few in between right now. But just walk us through kind of the inventory, the competition in that market.
I would say they're definitely still out there. There's opportunities that are out there for buyers to purchase these homes that would be good flips. There's always going to be maybe that ugly, crusty home on the block that you could get your hands on. So they're out there. It is a little bit more competitive, but like Holly had said before the episode here, like you have to get in the market to really have a chance at a lot of these homes. So just get with an agent, start seeing these properties, start seeing like what's in this price range, what kind of a flip am I going to get, and throw offers at them. Just, you have to start at some point. So just get in the market, get hooked up with a good agent, and they're out there.
They're out there. Well, and one other thing, too, in terms of condition, some of these houses may need a lot of work. So if you're kind of been toying with the idea of getting started in this investing or kind of owning and improving and selling, flipping market, you might want to start putting away some extra money, not only for the projects, but some of the homes, depending on the condition, may only be purchasable with cash or a strong conventional loan, maybe 10-20% down. So be kind of thinking through those things. Like Carly said, if you're financially ready, your next step is to talk with an agent. If you love the idea but aren't sure where to start, we can definitely still connect you with a good lender. But being financially ready to make those moves is important too.
Yep.
So if you've been thinking about this for quite some time and you're listening right now, this is a sign.
This is a sign. Put in the offer on the flip house.
Give it a shot.
Yeah.
So I think I covered everything we need to. Carly, any last tidbits you want to share with our listeners before we head off for the weekend?
I would say just be prepared for anything. Just take the leap. Do your first one. If you like it, do another one. If you don't like it, then you learned a lot doing it. So, that's pretty much, I would say, it.
Well, you gave us a lot of good content.
Yeah.
That's not just it. That was a lot. That was really helpful. And I think for those listening, it just takes getting started. Like
Right.
Carly said, get into the market, start getting acclimated. And the worst that's going to happen is you learn a lot of skills through the process. It might not be something you want to repeat.
And maybe your second home is move-in ready.
that happens for some people.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that. So, well, thanks so much for tuning in here to this week's episode. We love hearing from our listeners. If you have topics or specific questions you want to ask, our team is more than happy to address that. And we'll have Carly's information here below. She works with a lot of first-time buyers, a lot of investors, has kind of a heart for that. So if you have an interest, reach out to Carly. She'd be more than happy to connect and help you out in any way she can. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next one.
All right, thanks, guys.